Having gotten the Fantastic Four to the moon, Ronan the Accuser quickly kicked their butts. He scattered their forces, giving himself a chance to put his actual plan into action. He placed an alien parasite on the Invisible Woman. This parasite, called a mannequin, is slowly replacing every cell in Sue's body, leaving her mind free, but her body obedient to Ronan. The pair then headed to the home of the alien Watcher. Ronan plans to use Sue's powers to break inside of the house, where he hopes to find the fate of the Kree Empire. The rest of the Fantastic Four have regrouped, defeating 3 Kree soldiers that Ronan had allied with. Now, aided by New York Police Department Sergeant Jarlath Jones, Mr. Fantastic, the Human Torch, and the Thing need to stop Ronan and save Susan. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown episode 12.8, Mayhem on the Moon. Outside the Watcher's home, Ronan orders the Invisible Woman to focus her force field into a small beam and direct it at the building. He hefts his universal weapon, which is a long-handled hammer, and then does the same, pouring green energy out of it. The Watcher has defenses both physical and energy-based, after all. It is not only to keep him safe, but all of the strange devices and technology that he's accumulated safe too. So even when focused on nothing but this task, the pair's work is gonna take a while. So we'll let them work, and we're gonna go do something else. Last issue, Mr. Fantastic mentioned that there was a new facility that had been built on the rim of the crater that is the blue area of the moon. He was going to take Johnny there when he thought that he might be injured, but we didn't do that, and yes, I am still salty about it, thank you very much. But time heals all wounds, so let's move on. We head to that facility now, which is staffed by a team of scientists who are from NASA's Project StarCorps, as well as SHIELD agents who have more action-based concerns. A blonde woman named Callie Yeager appears to be in charge, and she is updated on everything that's been going on. The teleportation event that brought the Four Freedoms Plaza to the moon has also crippled the base's internal networks. Their cameras are working, though, giving them a view of Ronan's efforts at the Watcher's house. SHIELD knows that Ronan needs to be stopped, and the man in charge, a black man named Lucian, is told to do whatever he has to in order to do so. Callie, instead, hops onto their comms array. As far as she's concerned, there is only one man who can help them in time. On her computer screen, the logo for Stark Solutions pops up. Back on Earth, at a house on Lake Washington, we find Tony Stark hosting a party of senators and other important figures. His secretary, Pepper Potts, steps in, informing him that they have a call on Priority Channel D. Tony excuses himself and goes deeper into his mansion. The call might be for Tony on the surface, but it can only be handled by Iron Man. There's a problem, though. As seen in then-recent issues of Iron Man, the armor that Tony was wearing had been discovered to be generating an energy field that was slowly killing him. He has been working to compensate for that, but he hasn't perfected the design yet. He only has a single working prototype suit right now. But Tony knows that Callie is a calm engineer who can handle herself. If she is asking for help, then it is serious. He has to suit up. And so he does. I mentioned in Heroes Reborn Iron Man that I always have trouble reading Iron Man comics for any real length of time. Tony Stark very rarely works for me in the books. I have no problem admitting that. That said, I love this particular setup. Claremont has gotten us all caught up on Ronan's situation, he's introduced the StarCorps base and set up a couple characters there, and then smoothly drawn Iron Man and his own plots into this book and its narrative. We've already gotten 2 full-page images and a 2-page spread from Salvador Larroca, though, so I'm getting a bit concerned about him balancing the story. But the writing works, if it is a bit dry so far, and I applaud Claremont's ability to get all of these plates a-spinnin'. I love the idea that Iron Man's armor, which has traditionally kept him alive, is now potentially killing him. That's a cool inversion, and it also adds more stakes to Tony donning the armor. Think about it. Tony is always risking his life when he armors up, but now there is no risk. There's a guarantee. This will kill him. Eventually. So each time that he puts it on, he knows that he crawls ever closer to death. When would he stop doing it? Is Tony gauging threats? Like, is a kidnapping not important enough to warrant the attention of Iron Man, given that he could die in stopping it? I love that basic idea. I had some of Kurt Busiek's Iron Man comics when I was a kid, largely because the covers for them are really pretty, but I never really enjoyed the comics themselves. It's a cool idea, but it's not a cool enough idea to get me to buy a whole volume of Iron Man books. Back on the moon, our makeshift Fantastic Four are working their way through the tunnels beneath the Blue area, guided by Sergeant Jones. She has actually been here before, back in X-Factor 65 through 68, when she was dragged along on one of their adventures. If I remember correctly, that's the storyline where Cyclops' baby was kidnapped by Apocalypse. That's the kinda sorta origin of Cable. How about that? Anyways, we now have the reason as to why Claremont brought Charlotte here. She is the Fantastic Four's guide. Anyways, they're sneaking through the tunnels, working their way to the Watcher's house, but sneaky-like, you know? Naturally, this doesn't sit well with Johnny. He wants to go. They know where they're headed, and Sue has been taken by Ronan. Let's floopin' book it. But Reed knows that rushing in is dangerous, although they should update their knowledge on Sue's situation. So Reed uses his suit to tap into Sue's suit, gathering information about her vitals and environment. Remember, the Fantastic Four's costumes are made of a computer mesh. This was established during Lobdell's run on the book. Mr. Fantastic is able to access basic information about their health and environment through those costumes. A small hologram of Sue and Ronan appears over Reed's hand, showing them blasting at the Watcher's house. Horrified at his sister helping Ronan, Johnny flames on and blasts off, barely giving Ben time to shield Charlotte from the flames. Reed stretches ahead of Johnny, cutting him off. The pair talk, Reed eventually getting Johnny to calm down. Remember, Johnny and Sue lost their mother when they were young, and then neither of them were able to save their father. So Sue isn't just a surrogate mother to him, she's the only biological family member that he has left. If she is in danger, then he has to help her. But Reed counters that they won't save Sue through sheer power. Ronan has them utterly beat in that department. They need to be smart, and that means staying calm. Good character moment here. That is some good insight into Johnny. I do want to point out the discussion that Reed and Johnny have. Not the content of it, though, but the structure of it. This is a personal Claremont cliché. I don't know if everyone is bothered by this or if it's just me. But Claremont will often have character A rush off, or want to rush off, and character B has to then logically talk them down. It's usually something along the lines of, "It's not fair!" And then person B says, "Yeah, tough nuts, so what if it's unfair? What are you gonna do about it?" And then they talk through the problem. I can almost see Wolverine having this particular speech with Rogue back in X-Men Volume 2, Issue 102. And it only really bothers me because it's just so formal at this point. It's almost the same dialogue each time. Admittedly, this particular scene with Reed and Johnny isn't quite there, we're not at that level, but it was enough to set me off still. We'll see if we run into this again. I'll definitely be keeping my eye out for it. Ronan revels as he and Sue battle against the Watcher's defenses. This contest of strength and wills is what he lives for. But he wasn't joking when he said that Sue might die in the process. A sudden explosion shoots debris back at Sue, who had only been ordered to attack the Watcher's defenses, not to defend herself from shrapnel. The mannequin that has possessed her covers her wounds and heals them, but in doing so, it also begins to physically transform Sue further. Her eyes are bigger, almost all black, and wrinkles are forming on her face where her skull is beginning to change shape. Her mouth seems to shrink down as well, almost becoming this small, biting, circular mouth. Sue narrates the entire experience because why bother showing that happening in a comic book when you can also tell us that it's happening? This mainly bothers me because Sue doesn't control her own body anymore. The mannequin does. She should only have control of her thoughts. That's what Claremont told us. So sure, maybe this was meant to be a series of thought bubbles, and it's actually a lettering error, but it is a lettering error that made it to print, if it is one, and so we have to accept that it happened. The explosion draws Ronan's attention over his shoulder, where he finds several shield vehicles and armored fighters. They are what caused that explosion. They offer him a warning, telling him that he is trespassing, and that they have the okay to use lethal force. Then they open fire. Ronan encourages them to do their worst, because he most certainly will. The SHIELD agents open fire, but their attacks are blocked by the Invisible Woman. Confused by this, shaken, they are even more easily dispatched by Ronan and his universal weapon. The last soldier left alive begs for the Invisible Woman to save him, pleading, but she can't. Ronan blasts him into ash, savoring the idea of doing the same to Reed Richards and the rest of the Fantastic Four. They will all die knowing that Sue is his slave, and she will live knowing that she couldn't save them, and that the rest, that is death, will be forever denied her. Sue's eyes, now all black, shed tears. Well, that was actually chilling. Excellent job, Claremont and Larroca. Excellent job. The Fantastic Four continue their trek underground, but with a strange new problem. Energy pulses wash over them from time to time, and when they do, the tunnels around them shift in their composition. Reed and Ben discuss this, and Reed guesses that the energy being released on the Watcher's defenses is also reacting to those defenses. This is causing waves of pure chaos to wash over the area, allowing past, present, and future to all exist in the same space at once. If Ronan isn't stopped in his endeavor, well, it is literally impossible to say what could happen, because anything could happen. Johnny isn't impressed by all this. All he wants to do is save his sister. He pushes on ahead, lighting the area for them, but then he stops. He calls the others to come on up. They need to see this. The scene they come upon is dramatically different. The tunnels of rough rock give way to carefully sculpted and shaped columns and archways. Smoothed, polished tiles cover the floor. Music pours through hidden speakers, the work of Ralph Vaughan Williams. Ben recognizes the sculptress Alicia Masters hard at work, her hands moving over tall, detailed, lifelike models of the Thing, Mr. Fantastic, and the Human Torch. Before the group can say or do anything, Caledonia approaches Alicia, but she has a large four crest pinning her cape on, as if she is a member of the Fantastic Four. The pair chat, indicating through conversation that this 3/4 of the Fantastic Four have died. Before they get lost in their melancholy, though, Caledonia says that Baroness Von Doom has brought the kids from Earth to see her work before the exhibit. Ben and Reed stare on, horrified, as an older Sue enters the room. She's still beautiful and vibrant and alive, dressed in the blues of the Fantastic Four, but gray metal armor covers her legs, hands, and shoulders, and they pin a dark green cloak to her. Behind her is a teenage Franklin, dressed in similar clothes, and a slightly younger teenage girl is behind him. They all begin to chat, and once again, through conversation, we learn that Reed has at some point died, and Sue remarried. The girl, named Valeria, is the daughter of husband number 2, and Claremont is hinting very strongly that husband number 2 is Victor Von Doom. Or he was, until he also died, but not before spending his own length of time as the leader of the Fantastic Four. Sue moves on, chatting with Alicia and Caledonia, but Franklin turns to Reed and greets his father. Reed's mind is blown by this. Franklin can see him? He can interact with them? This isn't some vision. This is real? This is like reality? Franklin confirms that he can interact with them, yes, but only he can. At least until Valeria says that she can also see them too. That was something that even Franklin didn't expect. He gestures at Reed and starts to turn blue and white, fading away. He tells his father that no matter what happens, he has to let Galactus go. And then he fades away. In his place now is Iron Man, wearing the new armor that we saw him don at the start of the issue. Wow, that Iron Man scene was only a few pages ago, but it feels like issues ago to me. Jesus. How the time flies when you're reading Chris Claremont. Wow. Iron Man teleports in, confusing the Fantastic Four pretty well. Given what they just saw, is Iron Man real? Is he another, like phantom or illusion or vision of another time? But no, he is the good old 616 timeline regular old Iron Man. He assures the Fantastic Four of this, commenting that the fold space transceptor that Reed built has done a great job of getting him to the moon, but goddamn if it didn't wreak havoc with his onboard systems. That is a $1 million way of describing a teleporter, but sure, okay. Again, we have some of Claremont's why use one word when you can use 3 style of writing. Not too far away, at the StarCorps base, their systems are beginning to crash one by one. Yeager reports that an EMP is being generated on Earth. It is the largest that she has ever seen. Even if every nuke on the planet went off, it still wouldn't generate something on this scale. A S.H.I.E.L.D. agent adds that StarCorps is now functioning only on backup power, and if that power fails, then they all die. This feels like a random occurrence, given where and how the book has been focused so far, namely away from Earth and at the Fantastic Four. But this is actually a reference to a plotline that's going on in the X-Men books. It is a crossover event called the Magneto War. That EMP is being generated by Magneto in order to hold the world's electricity, and thus human society, hostage. And while I love Claremont's adherence to continuity and maintaining the fact that the Fantastic Four share the Marvel Universe with their neighbors, I also feel like he's getting a bit distracted. This story has gone from the Fantastic Four versus Ronan to the Fantastic Four visiting a potential future, hanging out with Iron Man, and now getting caught in the fringes of X-Men business. If the EMP that Magneto created plays a role in this story, sure, then reference it. But if it's just a thing that's happening, then leave it alone, man. It doesn't add to this particular story, it distracts from it. Although, whoever is in charge of page layouts did put this reference right after a one-page ad for the Magneto War. So, that's some good teamwork right there. So Iron Man has just materialized before the Fantastic Four, wearing what is, to them, some strange armor. The Thing comments that he can hear the whine of Iron Man's repulsor rays charging up, and Iron Man hasn't said anything to them so far, despite talking to us, the audience. So, unwilling to risk getting attacked, the Thing strikes first. This begins a short fight scene, largely between the Thing, the Human Torch, and Iron Man. Iron Man narrates the entire time, self-explaining that his armor is automatically fighting what it views as a threat, meaning those who attack it, meaning the Fantastic Four right now. Stark figures out that the Fold Transceptor has combined with the EMP on Earth and is causing his systems to bug out. In layman's terms, his armor is having a freaking nervous breakdown. If he could just reboot it, then he would be fine, but doing so while engaged in self-defense protocols is impossible. Thankfully, Reed Richards has figured the same thing out. He tells the thing to hold Iron Man, and he reaches inside and resets the connection between the armor and the Transceptor. And hey, while he's at it, he also programs in the coordinates for another jump, which puts the group inside of the Watcher's home. This normally wouldn't have been possible because of the Watcher's defenses, but Reed has been monitoring Ronan and Sue's progress through her suit. They had just breached the defenses themselves, and that gave Reed's group a chance to do the same, basically kind of hopping through the same window of energy. The Fantastic Four update Iron Man on what has been going on, and they rush off to stop Ronan and save Sue. Elsewhere, we step back a page and watch the pair that breached the energy field. There's nothing very notable about this particular scene. I just wanted to confirm for you all that Ronan and Susan do indeed get inside of the Watcher's house. And it's mostly thanks to Sue, by the way. So this is a weird issue. Overall, I enjoyed it. The story does not actually suffer from Larroca's pacing issue, despite him using a lot of big single-panel images or just large panels in general. I feel like he's starting to get the hang of this book a bit more, and that is excellent to see. I particularly like his take on Iron Man. I always have, going back to his rendition of the character in Heroes Reborn: The Return. I don't think that Claremont writes a very good Tony Stark, though. He is all engineer here, no personality. He talks us through everything that he does, or sees, or thinks in this particular issue. It's super annoying, especially given that his armor's vocal systems aren't communicating anything to his allies. This is just loud, obnoxious exposition, and I kinda hate it. It would almost have been cooler if the Fantastic Four had faded away from that alternate reality, and when they reappeared, there's just an Iron Man standing before them. And that's when the Thing attacks Iron Man, and we don't even have him speak at all, or get the scene from his perspective. All we see is an attacking Iron Man and the Fantastic Four fighting him. That would have been way more dramatic and way more interesting. The weird thing here was that Baroness Von Doom scene. Because traditionally, the story that we've got here is we would introduce the bad guy and their goals in part 1, the heroes would react and come up with a solution to those problems in part 2, and then they defeat the bad guy in part 3. Bada bing, bada boom. This is a nice, classic 3-part structure, and it's a good 3-issue story arc. It's beautiful, simple, clean. But this is a 4-issue story arc, and so Claremont can't wrap things up here. He actually needs to stall for time. This is easily done with Ronan and Sue's plotline. He just has them do a very, very difficult task, and it just eats up a lot of time for them. But the Fantastic Four are basically alone, because there was no one else on the moon for them to run into, and other than maybe fighting themselves, I guess, they don't have anything else to do here. So Claremont throws in something completely different.
And now for something completely different.
AKA the Baroness Von Doom scene. He outright tells us, just before it happens, that the chaotic energies were making it possible for the present and future to coexist, meaning that we are getting a glimpse of a possible future for the Fantastic Four. Now, you could easily dismiss this scene entirely. Possible futures are subject to change and are only important so long as the author who created them writes that particular book. No future is set in stone, even in the Marvel Universe. But this scene foreshadows a lot of plot elements that Claremont is going to be playing with in a few issues, as well as later on in year 3 of his run. So, sure, he is buying time, but he is also sowing seeds, and we will actually get to see these particular ones bear fruit during this run. This is a good way to not only fill out this issue, but still give the reader something that is important and is going to be important, even if it's not particularly important right now. Our mood madness now takes us to Iron Man issue 14, which was written by Roger Stern and co-plotted by Kurt Busiek, penciled by Sean Chen, inked by Larry Strucker and Eric Cannon, and it was colored by Steve Oliff. Stern opens the book with Iron Man scouting the Watcher's home by his lonesome. This is a solo comic book, after all. He narrates through recent events, including his health problems with his armor, and he gets readers caught up on the past few issues of the Fantastic Four, too, just so we're all on the same page. Since arriving inside the Watcher's home, the group split up in order to find Ronan and Sue. The Watcher's house is one of those bigger on the inside type of deals, so Ronan and Sue could be anywhere. The Human Torch has begun to encounter some automated defenses, as have the Thing and Sergeant Jones. No one has seen the Watcher yet, but hey, maybe he isn't at home. He's got a lot of stuff to do. There's a lot of watching to do in the universe. Iron Man rolls through his various sensors, and he does spot something on his thermal camera. He tells the others to follow his signal and blasts off towards it. So, right off the bat, this reads so much better than Claremont's issue. While Stark still doesn't feel very much like his modern iteration yet, and I mean, to be fair, we've got almost 20 years of difference, he does feel much more human here. He's still expositing narration and getting the audience caught up, but he does it internally instead of vocally. And even in doing so, he still sounds more human here. I also dig Sean Chen's artwork for this issue. When I opened the cover, there's a full-page shot of Iron Man just flying right at the camera, and I stared at it for almost 5 minutes solid. Chen is able to do a great job of making Iron Man's armor look like thick, strong metal, but also still look like the human body. This is a supersuit, after all. It has to convey the physicality of the character, but Iron Man gets the additional challenge of it being all metal. Chen is very good with machines and technology, but he isn't so good with people. I mean, they look like people, don't get me wrong, but they're very stiff, very blocky looking. Chen's faces always look a little bit goofy to me. A small detail that I like here is that there is a panel from Iron Man's perspective, and his armor has drop-down menus. So, in the panel where Iron Man spots Ronan, there is a highlighted menu with radar, acoustic, thermal, seismographic, and MRI scanners. Up above that is a taskbar with boxes for sensors, weapons, communications, and utilities. While nowadays Iron Man just has a floating glowing interface that he uses popularized in the MCU films, back in the day, that was not the case. This was top of the line. Getting to see Iron Man systems reflect the computer stylings of the late 90s era is really neat to me, given that I grew up in it, and it makes the armor feel more realistic to me. I can understand that probably wouldn't work for a younger reader reading this book today, where this would look downright archaic. The first thing I thought of was, well, how does he select a specific box and then a specific menu and then continue to work through all of these things while engaged in combat, while doing science, while communicating with people? It would just be ridiculous. We catch up with Ronan and Sue, who are at the Watcher's vault. Getting inside of the Watcher's home was only the first step in Ronan's plan. Now, they must breach his vault. So, they repeat what they did outside, and they open it up. Ronan leans into the vault with little trouble at all. Notice how easily they broke into this place? Author Stern doesn't have to buy time or waste time for another issue to come along and finish things up. We're already there, and it's already happening, so it just happens like blow, baby. Anyways, Iron Man swoops in and grabs Sue, introducing himself so that she doesn't panic, while also asking if she's okay. She barely responds, but at least they've got her now. The rest of the Fantastic Four have caught up at this point, and Iron Man passes Sue on to Reed. Obviously, Ronan has done something to Sue, allowing him to control her, but what? They don't quite know. Iron Man comments that when he snatched Sue up, her force field dropped and Ronan was sealed inside of the vault. Getting to him is not going to be easy. Well, it would have not been easy, except that Ronan just detonated the entire vault. Stern uses that moment as a cliffhanger, jumping over to Jim Rhodes for some Iron Man-related plot lines. Rhodes is in Casablanca, looking for someone named Parnell. He gets jumped by his guide, he kicks the jumpers' butts, and he wants to know where his friend is. The guy who led him into the trap won't do so again, he assures Rhodes, and the scene ends. I don't have any idea what's going on here. Is Jim Rhodes looking for Chris Parnell? Because that guy's voice is everywhere. He is a pretty famous voice actor at this point. I'm sure you're going to find him, Jim. If anybody can do it, I know you can do it. Back on the moon, Ronan exits the vault, shouting in joy that he has reclaimed the universal power core of the Psych Magnetron. Reed tells the Torch to lay down some cover fire, so he and Iron Man do so. Their group then books it in order to regroup. They all look to Iron Man for more information on the Psych Magnetron, but he doesn't really know a lot about it. He has encountered it, and the Psych Magnetron is a Kree weapon that is capable of manifesting any weapon that Kree science has created, so long as its user has seen it before. The device was actually banned by the Kree long ago, but it featured heavily in the Avengers crossover called Operation Galactic Storm. That is how Iron Man knows it. He was involved in that crossover. I actually just read that as part of a Wonder Man collection that I've been putting together, so this is kind of perfect timing. Like, I learned about this just in time to see it utilized in a plot again. There is a brief flashback to the crossover, and man, this is just perfect. I'm not exactly sure what the Universal Power Core does, other than, provide universal power, but I figure that we're going to learn that later. So the group doesn't have a lot of time to chat, as mechanical robots melt up out of the floor at Ronan's behest, and then they attack our heroes. Reed tries to lead Sergeant Jones and Sue to safety as the others start to fight the robots. Reed has definitely noticed the alien changes in Sue's physiology, but he assures her that he'll free her from these changes and that he loves her. As the battle rages, a destroyed robot's head suddenly goes flying at the group. Sergeant Jones instinctively shouts for Sue to protect them, and she does. Iron Man rushes over, apologizing for letting that get past him, but Reed is more concerned with Sue. She's been pretty non-responsive to verbal communication so far, but she reacted to Sergeant Jones's command. So now Reed's figured it out. He guesses that Sue will take orders from anyone, and so he attaches a microchip that will filter out any voice except for theirs to her neck. This means that Ronan won't be able to control her anymore. But, her friends and family still can, so well-meaningly, of course. The group then uses Sue defensively, protecting Reed and Sergeant Jones from Ronan's attacks. He is launching missiles, he's firing lasers, he's sucking up and redirecting the Torch's flame blasts, he's zapping the thing with a gauntlet that he generates. Ronan's going all out in this fight. All the while, Reed picks apart those robots that Ronan had summoned. He believes that he has a solution to this, but he needs Iron Man's codes for his onboard weapon systems first. We then bounce away again to catch up with Stark's friend Happy Hogan, who is at a youth fitness center helping to teach the kids boxing. He goes for coffee with the head of the program afterwards, a woman named Hannah. Hannah wishes that she could offer more for the kids, but with what they currently have, things just aren't very easy. Happy reminds her that the Maria Stark Foundation, which is the charity arm of Stark's financial empire, will be rebuilding the whole building soon. It's going to get decked out to the nines. But Stark has been pretty unreachable lately, and Hannah fears that her kids will be forgotten in all of the business. Happy assures her that Stark remembers his commitments, even if it does take him a minute to get to them. I don't know if this plotline goes well for Hannah, but I'm rooting for you, girl. On the moon, Reed passes his makeshift device to Iron Man. This should stop Ronan, but it is a line-of-sight weapon. He will have to be right in front of Ronan to use it. But that's fine, he is down with it. Iron Man and the Human Torch charge at Ronan, Sue keeping Iron Man invisible to get him as close as possible. The torch draws Ronan's attention, Iron Man fires his makeshift weapon at the power core, and Ronan does his best Darth Vader. The Kree technology is able to disrupt the Kree technology in the power core, knocking it offline. Ronan's weapons all fade away, as does Ronan himself, his body fading in a cloud of purple energy. The energy released from the blast also continues to move outward, hitting the clustered together members of the Fantastic Four. And now they, too, fade away. Iron Man curses this, explaining to Sergeant Jones that the energy wave interfered with Richards' full transceptor, and they got teleported. Iron Man uses his sensors to scan for them, but he's got nothing. The only thing that he's picking up at all is a radio transmission from the Star Corps base, and they are asking for help. Sergeant Jones is down to rescue some folks on the moon. I mean, why not? She's there after all. So the pair blast off to the rescue. Iron Man narrates that he can't afford to worry about the Fantastic Four right now. And honestly, they can handle themselves. He takes some measure of comfort in knowing that they did stop Ronan, at least. Ronan's teleportation returns him to his ship. He is tired and a little frustrated, annoyed at these ignorant savages besting him. Again. He plugs his universal weapon into the ship and plops down into a chair. Computer schematics pop up on his screen, detailing the basic plans for the power core. His universal weapon recorded them while he was using it, so while he may not have won this particular day, he has ensured the Kree's ultimate victory. It might take them years, maybe centuries, but nothing will stop the Kree from building the most devastating weapons that the galaxy has ever seen, returning them to their former glory. Well, I feel like this whole issue just flew by. It was so fast-paced, it was so well-balanced between the ongoing Iron Man plots in the background and still finishing up this Fantastic Four story. It's all nicely done by author Stern. I am super unfamiliar with Roger Stern's writing in general. He mostly wrote 80s era Avengers books, like he launched West Coast Avengers. Oh, and he did write some Superman for DC, but I'm not familiar with any of that stuff either. I mean, I recognize the name, but I don't know if Stern's a good writer or not from personal experience. I honestly thought that Busiek was still writing Iron Man at this point, and sure, he did plot the issue, but he had also moved on from the book at this point. This is actually Stern's first issue of his run, and I would say that it bodes well for him, as not only does it read pretty well, but he ends up staying on the book until issue 25, so that's not too bad. It's not a great issue, sure, because there's really no emotional depth to any of the stakes here, but I mean, it is a good issue. Stern catches us up on everything quickly, juggles a variety of plot lines, and not only wraps up the Fantastic Four's plots here, but he also sends them on to their next adventure, too. I am a little curious as to the fate of Sergeant Jones and the Star Corps base. Both of these things were plots that originated in the Fantastic Four's issues, so having them not wrap up by the ending of this story is a bit frustrating. I almost want to buy issue 15 just to see how this ends, but I also don't need to go down an Iron Man collection back road, so that's just a nope from me. I'll live with the mystery. I mentioned earlier how oddly paced this particular story is, and I stand by that even more here at the end. Our main narrative for this arc is Ronan kidnapping and using the Fantastic Four to achieve his goals. And while sure, we do rescue Sue, she is still merging with an alien and has no free will of her own, so that's a bit of a loss. Plus, the Fantastic Four are being teleported to God knows where, so we're rolling right on into the next adventure. These two elements really make it feel like the story kinda doesn't end. It just, skips a beat. Even stopping Ronan has no real weight to it, as he escapes with the plans to the power core, so, he basically won. I'll also say again that this is a really sneaky move for Ronan. He never planned to actually escape with the power core, although I'm sure he would have been pumped if he had. His plan was to use the Fantastic Four to get access to the core, download its schematics, and escape with those. And he pulled it off. The to be continued box at the end of this issue promises that Ronan's story will continue in Fantastic Four, but I actually don't think that's true. If I remember correctly, this is the only time that we see Ronan throughout Claremont's run. That's kind of a shame, as I really enjoyed the smart, sneaky, manipulative version of the character. But Claremont is the master of starting plots that might never be realized, and this is just one more of them. Next week, the Fantastic Four begin a trek through the Marvel multiverse. First, they find themselves manipulated by 3 beings calling themselves the Defenders, and in doing so, they must battle the Avengers. Then in issue 17, the Fantastic Four are Shadow City's most wanted criminals, hunted down by their heroic Lockdown and his partner Rosetta. But what made the Fantastic Four break bad? And what secrets does Shadow City hide? Find out next week on Comic Book Breakdown episode 12.9, Broken Mirrors. Everyone, there are a million podcasts vying for your time and attention, and I'd like to thank you for listening to mine. If you would like to get in touch with me to share a concern, request a series, compliment me, berate me, whatever you like, send me an email at cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening.